What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and today what I want to talk about is negative synchronicity and the law of attraction paranoid spiral loop that people get caught in when they're introduced to the law of attraction teachings. It's actually a common thing that happens to a lot of people, especially when people combine the law of attraction teachings with a lot of the fringe content out on the internet. So what exactly is this? What am I talking about? Well, it's really common that when people are introduced to the law of attraction, they're introduced to this idea that the thoughts that they're thinking and the vibrations that they're feeling are attracting realities to them, are creating their reality. And while there's truth to this, one of the negative spirals people can get into is when they start worrying that they're having negative thoughts, when they start thinking about the things they're afraid of, they can get into a spiral where because they're in that negative vibration, they're thinking about things that they're afraid of, they start seeing negative synchronicities in their reality. And then they can't stop thinking about them because they're worried that they're actually creating them. They're worried that these things that they're afraid of are happening, and they're seeing evidence now because they're seeing these negative synchronicities. And this can be a really, really tough vortex to pull yourself out of, because especially if you're really afraid of these things that you think that you're perceiving, then it's really hard to stop thinking about them because you feel like they're coming at you from all angles, especially when you're dealing with stuff like mind manipulation and aliens and other interdimensional stuff, because this is stuff where you're not really looking at concrete rational evidence in the physical world. You're tripping out about stuff that could be happening subliminally and in your dreams or in these in-between liminal states. And this can be, because it's so hard to peg those kinds of things, it can be like a recipe for psychosis, really. So what I want to start with is that if you are tripping out on some big grandiose thing, like you think aliens are manipulating you, or the Illuminati's after you, or you're part of my lab and you CIA's after you, or some crazy stuff like that, you can rest assured that you're probably tripping out. You're probably just tripping, right? Okay, so I've worked with a lot of people. I've experienced some of this myself. I've worked with a lot of people, and 99% of the time, people are tripping out. So here's the thing. What happens oftentimes is people are introduced to law of attraction teachings. They're introduced to all these crazy new ideas, and then the fears that they have inside of them, or and oftentimes it's not a specific fear, but it's just a vibration of fear stuck in their emotional body. This fear starts to puppet a lot of these new ideas, and then people start wrapping stories around these negative synchronicities that they're seeing, and it just spins out of control. So here's the thing. Sometimes this stuff is true. Sometimes there is crazy stuff going on, but the chances are you're probably tripping. And one thing you can be sure of is that if you're tripping out a lot and you're panicking about all these crazy things that are happening, that you can be sure that your fears are much bigger than the actual reality. Because here's another thing. It's common when people are introduced to this new outside-the-box crazy stuff like my lab program and UFOs and aliens and black magic and light magic and all this stuff. When people are introduced to all this stuff, it's really common that out of a wish for significance that they create some kind of false identity where they start building some story based off of fragments of dreams and interpretations of reality and processing of crazy fringe information. They create some false personality of them being some super important person in some interdimensional realm or something. And they're being followed by the Illuminati or by some black magicians or something like that. Now this is really common. So just realize that these kinds of things are oftentimes delusions. They're negative ego trips where people want to feel more important. So they're oh, I was in my lab or all these other things. So you got to be really careful about what your intention is, why you're actually feeling a draw towards these thoughts. Because oftentimes what it is a negative ego trip. We want to feel more important. So we mix that wanting to feel important with our fears, and then we create this scenario where we're being chased because we're an important interdimensional agent or something like that. So that's something to be really careful about. Now, like I said, I've worked with a lot of people that have gone through this. I've gone through this myself, and what I found is that over time, as I relaxed more and more, same thing with the people I've worked with, as we've relaxed more and more and interpreted our reality from a grounded space, from a non-panic space, what we've realized is that in the long run, we were tripping out Like, there was some of that stuff that was real, some stuff was really going on, but the stories that we wrapped around it were crazy, grandiose, and big. And this is one of the traps. See, oftentimes people give way too much credit to themselves to be able to manifest things super, super quickly. So they have some negative thoughts and negative ideas, and they see some negative synchronicities in the reality, and they think that, like, oh, this horrific thing is like upon them. But it doesn't actually work like that. Here's the thing is, when you have thoughts create an inner momentum within you. But you don't really set the universe into momentum, or the physical world into momentum, until you really start acting out into that world. So if you're freaking out and you're super panicked, and you start acting out in the world, then you're going to draw some negative attention. You're going to start creating some negative things in your life because you're acting from a panic space. But if you're just having panicking thoughts and you're seeing synchronicities, that doesn't mean that these horrific realities are actually moving towards you or upon you. All this means is that you're looking at your reality through a lens of panic. And whatever lens you're looking through the reality is how you're going to see it. Right? So it's showing you your internal vibration, right? And that's oftentimes what synchronicity is. Synchronicity is like, you were just thinking about this thing and now you're seeing it in the reality. But here's the thing, is like, a hairdresser sees everyone's hair. I've said this before. A shoe salesman sees everyone's shoes, right? So if you're in a panic state, you're going to be seeing all these things that reinforce that panic state. Same thing if you're optimistic. If you're in an optimistic state, you're high vibration, you're going to be seeing all these things in your reality that match that. Right? But that doesn't mean that you're actually creating that in an invasive way where it's going to invade your life. In order for things to start really moving in the physical world, you have to start taking action in the world. You have to start doing things. So here's the other thing to be aware of. Actually, when you see positive things in your reality, you move towards them, right? If you're seeing positive synchronicities in your reality, and positive, which are opportunities, right? You move towards them. But if you're seeing negative synchronicities, you move away from them. So it's actually a lot harder to manifest those things that you really don't want to manifest, because naturally you have an aversion to them. You don't want to experience them, so you don't meet it and participate with that reality. In fact, the way that you would unintentionally participate with that reality, like I said earlier, is to freak out and run away from it in some like highly charged space that starts drawing other things to you, starts drawing other negative energies to you. And in my experience, the more I just chilled out, came back into balance, and started perceiving my reality from a balanced place, this stuff just started going away. And this actually happened with every single person that I've worked with. When I was like, dude, chill out. I've worked with a lot of people too. It's like, chill out, relax, let's look at this, let's process this from a balanced place. Like, okay, yes, this happened, this is for sure, but these are some crazy stories you're wrapping around it. Maybe like, don't take it so far in your imagination. Maybe like, just deal with what's in front of you. Breathe. And what happens is these things stop happening. Like, the crazy synchronicities stop happening. It dies away. But it's all about coming back into balance. Because here's the thing, is like, when you're in fight or flight, you can't perceive the world accurately. When you're stressed or you're worried, you're misperceiving the world. And there may be some really convincing evidence. There might be like, oh my God, these things are crazy. Well, here's the thing, is you're not going to be able to process that evidence until you come into a balanced place. So the number one thing you can do, even if things are really happening, even if you're really being manipulated by, black magicians, or there's some really crazy aliens trying to mess with you, check it out. When you come into balance and you relax yourself, that is the best defense you can have. So whether it's actually real, whether your fears are real or whether they're not, the best thing you can do is come back into balance and process it from a grounded space. Maybe put on I like to watch funny videos of kids like running into, like falling on sleds and stuff. It makes me laugh. And so doing that kind of shifts my vibe. But do whatever you need to do to listen to music. Do whatever you need to do to get into a better vibe. And when you're in that better vibe, then you can start processing whatever it is that you're going through. If you find yourself starting to panic again, come back into balance. And that's the most important thing you can do, is come into balance. Because when you're in balance, you see things clearly. When you're in fight or flight, like I said, you're not going to perceive the world rationally. You're pulling all of the blood from your brain into your extremities when you're in fight or flight. So you can't actually think clearly. And all you're going to do is see threats. You're going to create threats out of anything. This is what happens to everyone when they're afraid. So then you might say, well, I've done a lot of crazy actions. I've acted out, panicked. in a lot of situations. I've already put the universe into momentum. Maybe I was acting out of a fear of something that was a phantom. It wasn't even real. But then I did all these crazy actions, and now I'm afraid that all these things that I did in the physical world set it into momentum, and now negative things are coming my way. So I experienced this too, and this is the same kind of loop. You're like, uh-oh, it's already too late, and now I'm seeing all these negative synchronicities, and I put this negative energy out in the world. It wasn't me just thinking and tripping out. Now it's coming to get me. So how I dealt with this was I realized that I needed to be proactive, right? And so I thought of it through the lens of karma. You put things out in the world, you get things back. You put vibes out, you get them back. So what I decided to do is, instead of worrying about things or trying to avoid stuff, I started to proactively work on the opposite current. So one of the things I was worried about was I had treated my body terribly, doing tons of drugs. I mean, like psychotic, the degree to which I treated my body bad. To the point where like there was so many ailments that I had, and I was like so beat up that it was just hard to even like actually walk down the street for a good amount of time. Like it was that bad. And so I knew something was wrong with me. I didn't know what it was, but I was scared to shit that I had killed myself, and basically like my body was just falling apart and I was going to die soon. So I basically had two options. It was easier in this situation than maybe some other situations, but it was really clear. I had two options. I was like, I could either keep freaking out about it, or I could really do something proactive to balance out that karma. So I started really working on my health, started doing everything I could possibly think of to balance my health back out. And I started helping other people that needed help with their health. And so in this way, I was like balancing out my karma. And this expands beyond just health, right? So this could be, you had made a lot of bad relationship decisions, and so you had burned a lot of bridges and created a lot of turmoil with other people. Maybe you had lied or cheated or done things that you feel ashamed of, right? So these kinds of things, you could be afraid that from all that stuff that you did, that you can't trust people now because you're going to be paid back for these negative things that you've done. So how I would approach something like that would be, I would choose to do my best to put good vibes out into the world, to do positive things for people, to try to mend any of those circumstances. Instead of trying to hide from them, instead of worrying so much of, oh no, this thing's coming to get me, how do I be proactive to balance out my karma? And there's a lot of different karma balancing practices. There's different breaths of fire that balance karma. Even intense exercise burns off bad karma. So there's a lot of different ways to go about rebalancing the scales. And to worry about it is just going to make it worse, because that kind of makes you stuck, right? You can't do anything. You're not being proactive because you're afraid. So bring yourself back into balance. And this is the best thing you can do to overcome your fears. So thanks so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Now, if you have any friends that are tripping out about this kind of stuff, make sure you get this video to them so that they can stop freaking out and start getting back on track and start creating the kind of reality that they want to live in. So thanks so much. This is Patrick Hayes, and I'll talk to you next time. Here's one more.